All right, give me some cover.
DeValle is the lone medic in the platoon. He's scared. Scared from the moment he gets out of the chopper to the moment it picks him up. Scared that someday he's going to get killed picking up a wounded buddy. Jorgensen just became a sergeant, but he doesn't like it. He'd rather be up walking point, where the action is. He's already got 3 Purple Hearts, so everybody calls him Hero. Somewhere in this jungle, there's several hundred North Vietnamese soldiers who could wipe out this little American unit to the last man in an unguarded moment.
Businessman there, drink my wine. Plowman, dig my earth. None will ever own the mine.
Okay.
Nobody under this world. Hey.
All right, give me some cover.
No reason to get excited.
Here, get him back here if you can. Can you move him? Okay, please bring him back here. Remember to stop the bleeding.
And DeValle, the medic, having survived another rescue mission, brings back his wounded man. Who is it? Who is it? The question spreads down the line. Oh, Christ, it's Hero, the sergeant who likes to walk point. How bad is it? A couple of leg wounds.
I looked up and spotted his NDA had been moved on and it was like a quick roll. I opened up in him, he opened up in me. Yeah, I'm afraid to push that one. He's lying up there on the trail.
President Nixon called the Cambodian intervention the most successful operation of the war. But a month after it began, Bert Quint found the Cambodian side of the border infested with communist troops who had already captured 8 journalists.
As we moved up to film the farmers inside, we noticed a couple of soldiers, maybe 200 feet away. They were wearing khaki and carrying rifles. There was no doubt in our minds. These were Vietnamese communists, perhaps coming over here to pick up the rice. We figured that if we remained, we would be captured, like our colleagues. So we decided we would run. By now, the soldiers were only about 100 feet away, and they opened fire with their rifles on full automatic burst. Fortunately, they were bad shots. Most of the hail of bullets whizzed past our little car. One round, though, as we sat and lay tumbled in the vehicle, spun by my hair and hit our French sound technician, Patrick Bart. It tore through his arm and into his knee. We kept going, racing bullets, and now racing Patrick's loss of blood as well on a 12-mile run for aid in Spe Rien. As we approached the city, we passed Cambodian troops lounging about, troops that rarely go on patrol because they know what they would find, and they don't really want to challenge the communists.
By 1970, it was possible to detect a difference in the attitudes of American combat soldiers. They knew that the war was winding down, that the U.S. government was pulling them out of Vietnam, and they didn't want to become the last casualties of a long and deadly war. There was still danger on every jungle patrol. One unit with a special sense of precaution was Charlie Company. On April 6th, we witnessed a unique event, a temporary revolt against the commanding officer.
I'm not going to walk out of it. I'm going to walk out of it. My whole squad is walking out of it. No, that's it.
The leader of 2nd Platoon looks on helplessly as 2nd Squad turns back, away from the road. He listens sympathetically. But since 2nd Squad was on point, leading the company, the entire column is held up. Captain Rice insists on obedience.
We're going to move out on the road, period. Now, either we're going to move out and they're going to get left behind, or I'm going to take the point and they can follow me if they want to. Now, it's that simple. Now, we got a job to do, we're going to do it. It's not half as dangerous as doing some of the crap we've done out here in the boonies walking through them. At least we can see what we're doing. Now, they either move out or else I move out and they sit on their butt right here. It's that simple.
The young lieutenant tries to persuade Rice to change his orders, but the company commander is firm. Rice starts down the road himself, but only 5 or 6 men follow. The captain moves about 15 yards when new orders come down from the battalion commander.
Okay, we're not going to be going down to Romeo. We're going to move back down to the whiskey on the Romeo and make a 3-shipper in a hurry.
He is told to go in the opposite direction, only 300 yards.
You go with, move out, and go this. The longer we sit here, the worse it gets.
This time, second squad moves, reluctantly.
Rivera, what do you think of this operation?
I think it's crazy. It's senseless walking down the road. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
What's the problem?
Oh, we just don't want to work on the road. This is one of the things that I told you about when we were wondering what a new CO was going to be like. These are the kind of things that you don't want to have him be like.
Yeah, it's great to have him with the country and walk down the
The duck in the shooting gallery.
Is there a rebellion today?
You might call it that. Back in the world, they call it rebellion. Here, it's downright refusal. Yeah, the whole company. CO says, okay, we're going to walk the road. And the whole company says, no, negative. We heard too many companies, too many battalions want to walk the road. And that's why they aren't what they are now. They're getting blown away.
Other forms of revolt were becoming more common in the American Army. At an artillery base northeast of Saigon, Gary Shepard found the soldiers getting high on marijuana. At times,
This is probably all SIDS getting busted, but I don't care.
Aries is not unique. What's happening here is also happening to some extent at virtually every other American installation in Vietnam. Recent surveys estimate that well over 50% of the soldiers in Vietnam use marijuana.
That's my good buddy, Sam.
Gary Shepard, CBS News, in War Zone D.
Americans were getting out of the war. Some were still in it and were re-enlisted. Jud Duval was in Pond Crew with the men of Charlie Horse Company.
Someone has to do it. And most of the ones that stay feel they can do it better. The guy just got over it. I think they actually believe that they feel the same way I do, that I'm actually helping somebody over here, that I'm actually doing something that's worthwhile. And that's why they stay.
In 2 months over the terrain west of Quezon, Charlie Horse lost 14 of its men in action. Men who are close to death are close to each other.
1, 2, 3!
The boisterous play includes dousing the new men with beer. The day after the singing and beer tossing, Charlie Horse lost 5 killed when 3 of its choppers were shot down. That day, too, Charlie Horse was rescuing others who were shot down but lived through it. Rescue is not the main mission, scouting is. But they happened on this one, a machine that had gone down and was burning. Riflemen who ride with Charlie Horse guarded the downed bird. There were no enemy around, but one never knows if that will be the case until he lands. Another similar mission. A small chopper, a scout from a sister unit down, having hit the side of a hill. All 3 aboard dead. A man worries about becoming accustomed, hardened to this. He wonders if he should allow himself to make friends. Wonders if love for a buddy has become a luxury. Charlie Horse pilots are fully aware that the danger is constant and substantial where they fly. At least one enemy soldier is seen by the scout.
There's an AK and a pack laying on a rock here. Hey, we got a gook.
Oh, we got a gook.
Okay, roll in that little creek there. We're taking fire out of there. That's it, right there, right there.
Okay, go straight up. Go straight up.
Okay, I think you got him.
Well, that was quick. First thing out, he got a gook.
Put some 50 in there before we look. Good idea.
That's it. That's it, my friend, right in there.
really caught him with your pants down.
Yeah, roger, pants
The
down.
North Vietnamese were testing the ability of the South Vietnamese forces to fight on their own. It was close-quarter combat and very fierce. Bob Simon reported from Route 1, south of Quang Tri.
Ranking South Vietnamese officer quickly decides the communists have been flushed out. He urges his men forward to finish them off. The decision is premature. The officer is the first to fall, an AK round in the chest. Then what everyone had been waiting for, a North Vietnamese soldier in the open, on the run. The men open up with everything they have. From the amount of fire coming at them, government troops had thought they were facing at least a company of North Vietnamese regulars. It turns out to be just a couple of platoons on another suicide mission. One by one, the men blow up the bunkers with hand grenades. They examine the bodies and sift through the belongings. There's a wounded soldier in one of the bunkers, but the men are in no mood to take prisoners. Up the road, civilians sense that the fighting is over, that the road is open. They come racing down on motorcycles and trucks. Another premature decision. AK fire rings out from a distant bunker. And the communists still have another surprise. The road is mined. It's mined to prevent tanks from coming down, but mines are not very discriminating.
On the last day of captivity, the prisoners were inspected by this Ceasefire's International Control Commission, a formation outside their cells, the half-dressed men grim, unsmiling. Then, seemingly to a silent signal, they marched to their cells. One grasped my hand in passing, only to have a guard break our grip. The paleness of the prisoners seemed to contradict the camp authorities' claim they exercised and played games morning and afternoon. He said, too, that the Americans fought among themselves, but mostly during basketball games. This inspection and the flock of American newsmen may have surprised the prisoners. They seemed somewhat dazed by it all, but the guards said they were told last week they'd be going home in a few days if nothing happened. We weren't supposed to talk with them, but we managed to sneak in a few words before guards broke it up. These with Master Sergeant James Goff of Fresno, California.
When's the first you knew about a ceasefire?
5 days later.
So you had reasonable feeling you're going to get out pretty soon,
Outside the camp, a large crowd of holiday, not unfriendly spirits gathered to await the prisoners' departure in their camouflage buses. Their route took them past some of their own work. The bomb-damaged Long Bien Bridge, past the destroyed railroad repair yard, and then on to the airport. As the buses stopped outside the airport, the quick, illegal conversations renewed, like questions as to who won the Super Bowl and how other teams were doing.
How are that Boston Bruins doing? Boston Bruins, how are they doing? Boston Bruins, that's not my team.
Just glad to see Americans. And then the North Vietnamese guards used their last minutes of authority to shut off the conversation again.
Those are the last known American prisoners of war. That part of the Vietnam tragedy is over. But they leave behind 1,300 others missing in action. There's not much hope that many of them survive. But now the grim search begins to try to account for everyone, if possible. But for these men, it is now the flight to freedom and on to Clark Field, the Philippines. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News, Hanoi, North Vietnam.
As soon as the rear stairway was lowered, the stampede of terrorized people tried to storm the plane. From the cockpit, the pilots reported by radio that the situation was out of control. Several times the pilots moved the plane, hoping to break the crowds around the rear ladder. There was no control. High-ranking officers in Da Nang have fled, leaving soldiers and airmen to fend for themselves. As men clambered over one another, pushing aside women and children in their panic-stricken fury, members of the air crew dragged them onto the plane, trying to fill it as fast as possible. The tension and panic intensified. The heavily armed men were menaced. They left their wives, their children, their aged parents on the runway while they forced their own way on board, a revel of young enlisted men. CBS News cameraman Mike Marriott and soundman Mai Van Duk dared not leave the plane, aware they might not be able to get back on. Stewardesses dragged people on and rushed them to seats, screaming all the while, "Where are the women and children?" They piled 4, 5, and 6 men into seats intended for 3. Finally, there was room for no more. The plane began to move as people still clambered up the ladder. Angry men left behind fired pistols and automatic weapons at the plane, determined that no one would go if they couldn't. A grenade went off under one wing, damaging it. Unable to move on the blockaded runway, the plane raced down the taxiway, swerving to avoid abandoned vehicles, perhaps even running over people. As the plane strained laboriously into the air, people were still clinging to the wheels from the rear stairs. 7 men fell off as the plane reached heights of 1,000 feet or more. As the plane reached 6,000 feet, 1 man was still stuck in the ladder. As calm fell on the smug men who had managed to fight off their friends and relatives to get on, the hard-working cabin crew took account. 268 people were on board, among them 5 women and 2 or 3 small children. The rest were some of the men whom President Chu said would defend Da Nang. Once in flight, the pilots assessed the damage to the plane. Bullets had damaged gas lines and the plane was losing fuel. The pilots were not sure the wheels would function on landing because people had attempted to hide in the wheel wells. The flight from Da Nang to Saigon normally takes about 50 minutes. This one took more than an hour and a half. Another World Airways plane flew alongside trying to assess the damage and reported that the cargo hatches were open and full of people.
Can't tell. I don't want to check until we get in closer. Let's see. Biggest problem I see at the moment here. Long 945, clear to Saigon. Something hanging down like your course. It may be a body. Did you say a body? Well, I can't tell. It sure looks like it.
Not knowing whether the wheel assemblies would hold, the flight crew put the plane, almost empty of fuel, down very gingerly on the runway at Saigon, and the deserters on board cheered. As the plane taxied to a parking place, soldiers poured out of the luggage holds. As cameraman Marriott was filming the unloading, a South Vietnamese Air Force security officer arrested him for taking these pictures. The Air Force had things under control again. But the men and women of World Airways had brought their plane and its load home. Bruce Denning, CBS News, back from Da Nang.
By 8 this morning, there were 1,500 lined up outside the embassy. They, too, are a part of the U.S. legacy in Vietnam. The American role as protector is about to end, and some of those who once felt safe are now filled with fear. Their faces tell more than words: hope, despair, resignation. They clutch documents, telegrams, or letters from relatives in the States, financial guarantees. At midday, there is still a small crowd at the gate to the U.S. consulate. Some are waiting for a letter or telegram of sponsorship from the States. Others grasp for any way out. They gather around any American who ventures near. 3 years ago, a woman said, "I worked for a U.S. company in Vietnam. Can I get out?" "Can you sponsor me?" asks another. It is painful to have to tell them that there is nothing you can do.
America can regain the sense of pride that existed before Vietnam. But it cannot be achieved by refighting a war that is finished as far as America is concerned.